Welcome back to Surveillance Midday. We continue our conversation on economics, finance, and investment. A quick data check here before we get to Dr. Paul. You can see the Dow negative 190, the VIX 38.14, up a good 4 points, better than this morning and much better than the U.S. markets looked yesterday as they were closed. Futures markets yesterday were just grim, so better than what we've seen in the last 18 hours. Bonds yields are lower. Killing savers, 1.99%, and the two-year yield curve flattening. Currencies, euro was a 139 handle. There it is, a 139.90. Weaker euro, and you heard Simon Derrick re-emphasize that weaker euro, stronger dollar, I guess. And then gold all over the place, 1,900. Gold now down where Ron Paul would buy it. He is a presidential candidate for 2012 for the Republican Party from the 14th District of Texas, Ron Paul. Dr. Paul, good noon to you.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
What is your #1 message today to your supporters? What is the #1 Ron Paul message?
Well, restore liberty. Our government's too big, and they're taking away our freedoms, and they have bankrupted our country doing it. So we have to fight for the cause of personal liberty, and the only thing we have to do there is defend our Constitution, and we can restore goodness to America.
How will we find liberty with a super committee? Let's take that as the focal point, not the president's speech. We'll get to that in a bit. You've got a super committee here. I'm surprised you weren't picked for it, but there it is. It's a super committee.
Yeah, I guess they're going to solve all our problems. But, you know, they're only being asked, you know, even if you could justify it, you can't really under the Constitution, and it doesn't make any sense that 12 people will finally solve the problems of our too much spending. But they're asked to cut $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years, and it really doesn't do anything. That's just $1.5 trillion cut on the proposed increases. And I think that we're in such a crisis that we should do something about our budget this year, immediately, and change our ways, change our foreign policy and our entitlement system.
Ron Paul, for those that support you and those that do not support you, are you willing to put up with the austerity and the fiscal drag that comes? We see austerity in Europe and how it has slowed down their economy. Why would ours be any different?
Well, you have to release the creative energy of industry in order to do that. Yes, if you just cut, I think the immediate effect is it slows things up. But if at the same time you tell everybody who wants to work for a living they get to keep everything, and reduce the taxes and reduce the regulations and make sure that we don't undermine the value of the currency, maybe people will go back to work then again. But they have to believe that the government will live within its means. So it's a major task to do all these things and actually get people to believe that the government will do it. That's the biggest problem. Who's going to believe the government?
I'm not sure. Well, Ron, I'm not sure this guy's a supporter of you. Let's bring it up here. Paul Krugman, writing with the New York Times today from Princeton. The peasants are revolting by blaming democracy. The people who have gotten everything wrong are letting themselves off the hook. The elites on both sides of the Atlantic have messed up catastrophically and need to face that fact. Paul Krugman wrote that, Ron. You could have written that same exact note as the peasants' revolt. How do you bring the angst that Krugman has and the angst that Paul has, how do you bring it together into a cogent message for Washington?
You know, that is pretty important, because the Krugmans of the world blames anybody who makes money as being an evil person. But we on our side of the argument blame the people in the corporate world and the banking world that's living off the government, getting their bailouts and benefiting by the financial bubbles, and then getting the benefits, and they dump all the expense on the people. So the Krugmans want to make sure that the government's going to take care of everybody, and they have these housing programs and easy credit. And, of course, somebody makes a lot of money when the bubble's being blown up. But then who lost their jobs and who lost their houses? So their system just flat out doesn't work.
When you go out for nomination, Congressman Paul, when you go out to be nominated by the Republican Party, who are you suggesting should take the haircut? Which part of America needs to take Alan Greenspan's shared sacrifice to get us beyond this crisis?
Well, you know, I talk a lot about this, but I tell the people if they're willing to accept their liberties or get their liberties, they accept their responsibilities, and they don't have to sacrifice anything. I mean, you should feel good if all of a sudden we didn't have the income tax for people who want to go out and make a living. They asked me the other day, they said, what are we going to do about the fact that only half of the people don't pay any income taxes? You know, the lower income don't pay income taxes, and that invites, you know, the question, well, they should pay their fair share. No, what I say is if half the people aren't paying income taxes, we're halfway there. But, of course, that makes no sense unless we change our ways. We have to change our foreign policy. We have to change the notion of the entitlement
One
system.
final question, Congressman. What do you need to hear from President Obama this Thursday night? We have a terrible unemployment rate in your district, everywhere else. What do we need to hear from the president?
Well, of course, the only thing that would get me excited would be if he accepted the principles of the free market and sound money and changes his foreign policy. And we know that's not coming, so I don't have very many high expectations. He's going to come up. I saw one member of Obama's party that said that what we need is $1 trillion jobs program, and that'll solve all our problems. And Paul Krugman would probably go along with it. If he says that, that will absolutely just compound our problems. So right now, I'm not optimistic that he's going to say anything favorable.
The doctor from Texas, from the 14th Congressional District, Ron Paul, drops by today. Don't forget, we've got a debate in October. All the Republican candidates, Hanover.